Hello and welcome to the show. My guest today is Victor Labarthe. I first met him when he was a film student at Loyola University. We ended up working on a private project here together in Wenatchee, became friends, and have stayed in touch. I've watched his career evolve, including the two recent Lonestar Emmy Awards he's received for his work in journalism. He's here today to talk about how the pivots in our career are sometimes the gifts we don't see coming. Hello, Victor. It's good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Yes, hi Lisa. It's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, we've known each other quite a long time. We have a connection to your family here. And my son met you before I did. And all I heard about was Victor, who goes to Loyola in LA. He's going to make movies and he's like going to film school. And Hunter was a big lover of film, still is, and thought he might go to film school someday, took a different direction. But I heard a lot about you before I met you. And then when we met, I just had the pleasure of working with you on a private project once and spending time with you. And it's just a pleasure to see you succeed and figure out your path. And so we're going to talk about that, your path, and just how sometimes you think you're going to go one direction and you take these other opportunities and you end up somewhere else, but it's still a good place. It's somewhere you would have chosen for yourself if you'd thought of it, right?
Absolutely. Life is funny that way. I think it happens to a lot of us. That we think we have this idea. I wanted, as you mentioned, I wanted to do film. I studied. I was really sad. I wrote this script. I shot a pilot. Teaser.
And it's not easy to get into Loyola Film School. You were devoted. You had
Yes,
you had to submit work and show your commitment to the craft.
that's right. A lot of reference letters, work. A reel, and yeah, a lot of hours put into the grades as well. Loyola does check a lot on grades, which I wasn't the A student, but I think my work kind of balanced that out. And I did 2 degrees actually in Loyola. I did film production, but also theology, right? So I think those two kind of merged in the sense of storytelling, right? And
Yes.
culture and history, and yeah, it was just a wonderful mix.
Well, in storytelling, let's talk about storytelling because I'm a big fan of it. It's what I do for a living in different
That's right.
little ways I do it, whether it's this show or traveling on the tours that Town Toyota has sponsored. We've gone and I've been to 27 states for the Don't Wait Project and interviewed people about their Don't Wait stories. And so when I think about storytelling, when I was a kid, I wanted to write books. And that's all I wanted to, that was my dream, write books and maybe a screenplay someday. And if I relied solely on writing books to live, I would have starved. However, there is a lot of success and a lot of other career paths I've taken from writing those 2 books and what they've led to. So I might give a keynote in front of hundreds of people and sign books in the back of the room, but I'm not really there for the book. But had I not written the book, maybe I wouldn't have had those
Right.
connections, right? So we get where we're going one way or another.
This is true. We make our own path, and it's I wouldn't end up doing journalism if I wouldn't love also storytelling, right? Since I was a kid, I actually wanted to be an actor, right? But I did a casting for a commercial, for an ice cream commercial down in Peru, and once I was there, obviously I wasn't casted. I didn't end up getting the gig.
Well, that's
But
obvious to me. I would think you would do a good job in a commercial, but you didn't get it. And then what happened?
but what I saw was all the work that goes behind the scenes, right? I saw the camera guy talking with director and producer and all the people like wrangling the kids, who were being casted on, and I saw that angle, and I really liked it, and I was like, okay, there's something there that for me to explore, and so I did. So that stayed with me from a young age, right? So I started tapping into that, and when I finished high school, I moved to Seattle, and I was like, okay, I'm set. This is what I want to do. I went to community college up there, and then I transferred to Loyola, right? So it was a long process for me to also discover that voice, or that I'm still discovering, right? Um, but yeah, it's funny how the people I meet and how they sort of change, but also doing the same, right? Like writing books and doing the show, and we do have a lot of elements. It's not like now doing television and news and broadcasting. There is some cinematic element that I still try to hold within, and that is wonderful, right? How we can explore different areas, but also maintain what we truly are, right? When we truly
storytellers.
Yeah.
I would think too that you're a greater asset because you understand all of these elements. That you're not just one. You're not just good at one thing in the building. That you have these skill sets that have to do with the camera. What is a good angle? What is a good way of telling a story? Because sometimes, the story can get lost in the equipment. It really can. It's true that we can make a film out of an iPhone now, and we know that beautiful films have been made with really simple equipment now. You don't have to have all the big things, but even knowing how to use the tricks of the trade, you've learned how to do that over time. Self-taught and your education, your formal education.
Yes, absolutely. And these things that also come with teamwork, right? A lot of collaboration and knowing and trusting also the team, right? Like knowing what the strength of certain member of the team is contributing, right, to the whole project or the whole for the whole vision, right? As long as we're going to the same direction, it's a lot about trust, right? When I'm in the control room, producing a newscast, I do trust the reporters, obviously. I couldn't say the way eloquently how they express what they're living and what they see and what they see.
Under pressure too, under pressure.
And with time, because sometimes I do telling times, so or the editors, right? Like chopping so many VOs with different rhythm and stuff, right? Times that it is a lot of constraints. And he's managing all that, right? Is trusting, and I feel like that's a big part of what we do. Right?
Let's take a quick break, and we come back. I want to talk about those Emmys sitting on your shelf behind you, and what those mean to you, but also another stop along the way to get to where you are. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back talking with you, Victor, about your career path and just the different detours and road stops and things that have happened along the way. And let's talk about your master's program, because you were heading to Spain. You went to Spain, and it was a program both for executive producing and for news, correct? For journalism.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And so you're there, and you're excited again, another program that was probably not super easy to get into, but you did. And how long were you there before you got sent back because of COVID in 2020?
Yeah. So when I finished Loyola, right, I had written this script, this feature that I wanted to shoot in Peru. So I went down to Peru, gather all the casting, all the crew behind the camera. I went to Cannes actually to try to shop it and get it financed, right? Yeah. And in Cannes, it was Meet TV. It was a market. It wasn't the Cannes Film Festival, right? It was a market that happens before the Cannes Film Festival. So then I met the director of this program, MPXA. Which is the initials of the Master of Production Journalism Audiovisual, right? And this is in Galicia. This is in Spain. It's kind of on the corner between Spain and Portugal in the north west. And they don't speak Spanish. Well, I mean, they do speak Spanish, of course, but they have their own language as well, which is Galician, right? It's kind of like a mixture between Spanish and Portuguese. So I started the program months, like probably 2 or 3 months before COVID pops, right? And COVID hit there hard. So what happened, the program adapted really quickly, right? We started doing hybrid. At first it was all like at home connecting, Zoom and stuff. Then we went hybrid. And what I learned was that storytelling is obviously not just film, what I thought. And we were only 10 people abroad that were, were given the scholarship. People from Argentina, Colombia, there was a Brazilian, there was me, and there were 20 from Spain, right? And then there was one Italian as well, I believe. So sharing all these stories, all our backgrounds, and a lot of journalism as well. I came through the production for film, but I met like all the journalists that were also in the program with me. And I learned a lot. I kind of fell in love with journalism. I'm not gonna lie. I found it fascinating, and that's how I decided to consider it, right, as a career as well. So when the program ended, I went back to Wenatchee, right? I went back to Washington State, and for a few months I was, applying. It was really hard to get a job, and during those times because, COVID and stuff. So I managed to actually get into producing job in Univision. That was an affiliate in Yakima, Central Washington, and our area of coverage was Central Washington, north of Oregon, and also the north of Idaho, right? So we were able to cover a lot, and it was just that we were two. We were two as a team, right? It was me as a producer and the anchor, and sometimes the anchor won't be there, so I'll have to fill in as an anchor.
Okay, so it's a tight operation. So you're using a lot of skill sets, as we were mentioning before, that luckily you had some, and then there were some you had to develop. Question then, so do you think that if the program hadn't had to shift to this hybrid version and use different elements of storytelling than what you'd gone to Spain to do, would you have, I mean, it's hard to know, but that kind of set you on a different path, didn't it? Because you went to that program thinking film, and then you fell in love with journalism, and maybe you wouldn't have had that opportunity had things not gone as they did, and you had to pivot like so many people in the world had to pivot your plan.
That is a really interesting question. And I'm not sure how to answer that. I'll say that I guess things happen for a reason, and I was exposed to it at the right time. And the conversations that I've had at the time with my colleagues then opened my eye, right? Made me really consider it. And definitely the skill sets do transfer.
Yes.
As far as plotting, as far as, doing some editing, right?
And I would think that news stories, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I would think that news stories, unless it's a piece, it's an hour-long special or a 30-minute special, you have a finite amount of time to tell a story. So you get rid of a lot of the extra stuff that maybe even in a film, obviously a director and has to go through and cut along a lot in a feature film.
Right.
There's things that we see later after the fact after a film's released. But in a newscast, you have it's like someone picking up a book in a bookstore, and you have less than 10 seconds for them to like the cover to see if they'll even read the back. So a news story is kind of, I would think, a little bit the same, that you've got to capture their attention and their empathy and their interest from the start.
Definitely. Most definitely. There are specials in which we like for the Astros, right? When the Astros won, we didn't stream that on air, right? We went just purely digital, and we couldn't time it. We didn't know how long, if they were even gonna win. We didn't even know. Right? We were like live, just waiting, like the last few minutes.
Yeah.
The last inning, we were already like kind of live, kind of waiting what happened, right?
Oh, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that room. Yeah.
Yes, it was fun. We had all the graphics ready, in case we were in, like, boom, we were all out, right? All the graphics, all the monitors in the studio. And we had like 4 reporters all around town just trying to capture that moment, right? When the Astros win the World Series, right?
Yeah.
So more than having the timing, because it was hard to time it, right? It was finding the rhythm, right? Okay, we're gonna go with this reporter outside the stadium for however long we can stay there, and then come back to the studio in a split box, and then let's go to the store when they're selling the the equipment, and the Astros champion, right? Like all the hats, all the stuff printed.
It's printed just in case they win too.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So, of course, there was another conversation afterward that what would have happened with that club if they lost, right? What happened then? But that is another conversation. We also had our sport anchor was inside the stadium sending us footage, right? Through recording, he was sending us like, okay, this is happening in the locker. They're celebrating like this, the players, right? All this, like all the, like the shower and champagne and all that. So capturing that moment is what got me the first Emmy, right? Is what made it so special, capturing that moment. We were a huge team, right? Editors in the control room, technical directors, and I did line producing for that. So I was in the control room, right? Like
Tell us
finding
what
that
line producing is.
So line producing is timing on a regular show, I guess, and kind of having all this stuff ready for what's coming up next, and calling talking with the reporters, talking with the anchors, letting them know what's going on, or where in the set is the next shot, and stuff like that. So it's a lot of communication, right, with talent in front of the camera, and again, like the timing and the rhythm. So that was the magic that I had to that I was part of, right? And that was during, like, with Astros. It was just phenomenal. During the regular shows though, so we have a 30-minute right show, or 35, and we have a few breaks, right?
Right.
So it's total about 22 minutes or something worth of content. Finding how much time to give each story is what's part of the producing gig, right? Like, okay, this story we can tell it in 20 seconds or 25 seconds, or even more, maybe 45, or maybe we allocate an anchor or a reporter to tell like this story in 2 minutes, right? Make a package, be live somewhere, make some graphics, how to color the story, with video, with some interviews. So definitely specials are different than a regular 30-minute or an hour show, right? The second Emmy that I got is it was a breaking news, right? So it was a tornado that hit a part in Houston metropolitan area, which is Deer Park and Pasadena, right? So this happened earlier this year, and a lot of members in the community were affected, right? Like houses were destroyed. We had a cameraman just walking around getting some sound, some interviews, and then another reporter got there. And it was a really hard scene to see, right? Like we had weather anchors and explaining what was the situation, right?
I lived in Houston during a couple of the big storms. I lived in Houston for almost a decade, and there's stories all over the country of these big storms that happen, and until you see it in person, it's really hard to imagine. And you got to do your best, obviously, to tell that story through the work that you do, and to be rewarded for telling it well, to have not exploited anyone's misery in a time of real tribulation, is an honor and an achievement. So to win an Emmy for the excitement of the Astros winning the World Series, and to win an Emmy for the empathetic story that you helped tell of the people who were really devastated by a huge impactful storm in your city where you live, is work to be rewarded. So congratulations on your Emmys. Let's take a break, and I just want to tell everyone where you're headed next, and then we'll let you get back to work, okay? We'll be back in just a moment. We're finishing up with you, Victor. I just want to tell the full circle to your story thus far. commending you for your 2 Emmys, Lonestar Emmys in Texas specifically. And you are off to a new city. We just have a couple of minutes, but tell us what's next for you.
Yes, I'm, truly grateful with Houston. It was a short visit. I have nothing but, gratefulness for Univision 45 Houston, which opened this door for me. And it was the best way to close this chapter. Now my winds are blowing up north. I'm going to Durham, North Carolina. I'm switching from the Spanish market to English. I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm sure it will be great as well. I have nothing but great references and great relationship with the producers and the executives that have I've been in contact with up there. So I will be in ABC, ABC 11, WTBD. So make sure to tune in.
Right?
Your town. Yes.
For sure. Well, I just, I hope that someday you'll consider, and I know you've done this in some capacity, but really just sharing your story, and even with young people, even in a college setting or in a journalism setting, and letting them know, because I try to mentor young students sometimes when I'm asked or when I have the opportunity to say, this is the one dream I had, and if I'd stuck to just that one spot in my life, I wouldn't have been able to, experience these other things. So I think that your story is telling in the way that the pivot during COVID obviously impacted you, but also just your openness to pivoting in the first place.
Absolutely, Lisa, you're absolutely spot on. I think definitely being open, don't shut, like the horse, right? They gotta run like this. I'll say maybe open it a bit, right? Consider other options, because doors could open anywhere, and there's a lot of blessings that could come as well through those doors. I always wanted to do film. Maybe you wanted to do film. Maybe you want to write books, right? But you consider these other options, and there's nothing but greatness coming along.
Well, what I learned is that what I wanted to be, that I didn't realize at the time, is I wanted to be a storyteller. And everything that we just talked about is storytelling. And I think as long as we're open to the pivots and the possibilities, anything is possible. But also, what are we willing to endure to tell a story? Your willingness to pivot and go, okay, film is what I thought I wanted. This is where I ended up. And we got to be willing to be open.
This is right. This is absolutely right. Thank you so much, Lisa. And yes, this is preaching, right? Being open, and yes, let's see where it takes it. I'm sure it's always for the better.
Yeah. Well, stay in touch. I want to be able to follow up and share your career path with the audience. And of course, I'm going to try to see you during Christmas when you're here. And I just always enjoy staying in touch and seeing you. So thanks for your time. I'll let you get back to work.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the time.